Hello, my name is Eric Wilson, and here's a look at my code and what we ran into, or what I ran into during the process. Here's a look at the studio itself, the apps folder, the app.js folder, and the functions folder. First we'll go over the apps folder, which is right here. Created a background window. I got a text view window. Then it was time to create a text and a text label to go inside of the above window view. I made sure that text said something like that you would understand. You know, we're going to talk about fruit. Now create the first button on the left. We'll call it the previous by the new name. And now we'll create the text for the left button, which is previous. See, and that's where it's located right down there. Now separate the buttons into left and right. So this one was preview next, and create the text for the right button. Now that I got it in the right place, I put next and in the middle of it. Then comes the require function, or the variable load file require functions, and that's right here. This is where the logic is. And I had an array. We had 5 things in there: oranges, apples, pineapples, bananas, and watermelon. Here's the code itself. The array was a bit tricky, but after some trial and error, we were not supposed to do any loops. So after I hid the first button, then I came up with the if. Instead of the if else or if then, I just went with if. And if the array was null, well then you proceeded to 0, or oranges. And you just kept on going and going and going right there with that iteration I++. And this is where the labels would be in the upper right hand corner, where you will see in a minute. So that was for the event lister clicking forward. Okay. Now it was time to build another event lister for the previous button. Okay, and that one we would call backward. And in the backward one, if any array was null, then I equals the array length minus 1. Now I'll explain that. You got the length, which is 5. However, the length itself will count 6, meaning as you scroll through, you would get a null or a blank page. That's why we did minus 1 and did 0 through 4. Remember, it's counting 5. The length is counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are not 5 things according to the array because we begin with 0. There are 5 things, but it begins with 0, so you go minus 1 so that you're scrolling through the array correctly. I always wanted to make sure that the console was producing the same thing as my app, so I put that in there as well. And there's the I minus minus for moving backward. And without further ado, here's the app. This is where my button was. Click the buttons below to start reading about the fruit we have available. You hit next. We've got oranges, apples, pineapple, bananas, watermelon, oranges, back to oranges. And the previous one would go from previous to back to the last one: watermelon, bananas, pineapple, apples, oranges, and we're back to the beginning.